Darkness. Complete. Absolute. The kind of darkness that swallows sound. You're a Persian satrap named Ariobarzanes. You command the garrison at the Persian Gates, a narrow mountain pass that's never fallen in 200 years. Your 40,000 warriors hold the high ground. Your archers have clear sight lines. Your position is mathematically unassailable. Below, in the valley, 22,000 Macedonians are trapped. Their king, that arrogant Greek boy who calls himself Alexander, tried a frontal assault this morning. You slaughtered 3,000 of his men in 2 hours, sent them running back down the mountain with arrows in their backs. Your officers are drinking wine, celebrating, mocking the famous Macedonian tactics that failed so spectacularly. So much for Alexander the Great, they laugh. More like Alexander the Dead. You allow yourself a smile. Tomorrow, you'll finish them. Tomorrow, you'll send this boy's head to Darius and restore Persian honor. But something feels wrong. The night is too quiet. The Macedonian camp below shows no fires, no movement. It's like they vanished. Then you hear it. A sound that shouldn't exist. Footsteps, thousands of them, behind you. You turn. See nothing but darkness. Then the darkness starts screaming. November 330th, BC, the Persian Gates. What happened in the next 6 hours didn't just break a garrison. It invented modern special operations warfare. This is the night Alexander proved that sometimes the best tactics look like madness until they work. And then they look like genius. The morning before. 11:23 a.m. Alexander stands at the base of the Persian Gates, staring up at an impossible defensive position. The pass is 50 feet wide at its narrowest point, sheer cliffs on both sides, 200 feet high. Ariobarzanes has fortified the high ground with the stone walls and archer positions. Parmenion, Alexander's second in command, does the math out loud. 40,000 Persians on high ground with clear fields of fire against our 22,000 attacking uphill through a kill zone. We'd lose half our army before reaching their position. So we don't attack uphill, Alexander says quietly. There's no other way through. This pass is the only route to Persepolis. Alexander's smile is cold. That's what they think. He calls for Ptolemy, his most trusted cavalry commander. I need scouts, local guides, anyone who knows these mountains. Find me another way. Ptolemy looks at the sheer cliffs surrounding the pass. Another way to where? We're in a box canyon. Find me a path they don't know exists. Something impossible. Something insane. That's where we're going. The officers exchange glances. They've seen this before. Alexander getting that look in his eyes. The look that means he's about to do something that violates every principle of warfare. 12:47 p.m. Alexander orders the frontal assault, not because he thinks it'll work, because he needs Ariobarzanes to think that's his only plan. He needs the Persians confident, comfortable, convinced they've already won. The Macedonian phalanx advances up the narrow pass. 18-foot pikes raised, shields locked, moving into the kill zone with the grim determination of men who know they're about to die. The Persian archers wait until the Macedonians are 100 yards from the wall. Then they release. 3,000 arrows launched simultaneously. The sky darkens with shafts. The phalanx raises shields, creates a roof of wood and bronze. But at this angle, attacking uphill, the protection is incomplete. Arrows find gaps. Men fall. The advance slows, stops, begins to retreat. Ariobarzanes watches from his command position and allows himself satisfaction. See how the great Alexander runs. Tomorrow we'll finish them. His officers laugh. Pour more wine. The legendary Macedonian tactics have failed. The unstoppable army has been stopped. What they don't see is Alexander, back in the Macedonian camp, meeting with 3 local shepherds who know these mountains like they know their own hands. There's a path, one says nervously, but it's not really a path. It's a goat trail, maybe 18 inches wide in places. One side is cliff face, other side is a 300-foot drop. Can men climb it at night? The shepherd looks at Alexander like he's insane. Men, maybe, in daylight, with ropes and guides, at night, you'd lose half your force falling to their deaths. Perfect, Alexander says. Show me. 3:34 p.m. Alexander assembles his best troops, 3,000 men, the most experienced climbers, the fearless ones. The ones who followed him through 3 years of impossible victories and trust him absolutely. Tonight we climb, he tells them, single file, in complete darkness. No talking, no fires. One hand on the man ahead. One foot in front of the other. Anyone who falls, falls silently. No screaming, no warnings. We can't alert the Persians. A young soldier raises his hand. How long is the climb? 6 hours, straight up, in darkness. The soldier's face goes pale. And if we fall? Then you die quietly so your brothers can live. Any questions? Silence. Not because there are no questions. Because these men have learned that questioning Alexander is pointless. He's going to do this insane thing regardless. The only choice is whether to follow him into the madness or stay behind and miss the victory. 6:18 p.m. As the sun sets, Alexander makes a show of setting up camp in the valley. Fires lit, tents erected, sentries posted. Everything designed to look like an army settling in for the night, defeated and demoralized. Above, Ariobarzanes watches with satisfaction. Tomorrow, he tells his officers, tomorrow we destroy them completely. He orders most of his garrison to stand down. Keep a light watch. Get rest for tomorrow's slaughter. Why waste energy guarding against an enemy that's already beaten? What he doesn't see is Alexander and 3,000 men slipping away from camp in complete darkness. No armor, no pikes. Just swords, climbing ropes, and the kind of courage that looks like insanity until it works. 7:02 p.m. The climb begins. The goat trail is worse than described. In places it's barely a foot wide. The cliff face on the left is smooth stone with few handholds. The drop on the right is invisible in darkness, but you can feel it. The void calling. Alexander leads, always leads, never asks men to do what he won't do first. Behind him, 3,000 men climb single file, each with one hand on the shoulder of the man ahead, each step tested before committing weight. The sound discipline is perfect. 3,000 men climbing a mountain in darkness, and the only sound is breathing. Heavy, controlled, terrified, but determined. 20 minutes in, someone falls. A young Macedonian named Clytus. His foot finds air instead of stone. He goes over the edge, opens his mouth to scream. The man behind him clamps a hand over his mouth. Too late. Clytus is already gone, falling into darkness. They hear the impact seconds later. Wet. Final. The line pauses. Every man processing what just happened. Clytus was 19 years old. Now he's dead at the bottom of a cliff, and they can't even retrieve his body. Alexander's voice cuts through the darkness. Quiet, but carrying. Keep climbing. They keep climbing. 9:47 p.m. 2 hours in. The trail gets narrower. Now it's sometimes just 10 inches wide. Men are pressed flat against the cliff face, shuffling sideways. Each step a negotiation with gravity and death. Another man falls, then another. The line doesn't stop anymore. Can't stop. If they stop, they'll think too hard about what they're doing, and the fear will paralyze them. A veteran named Hephaestion is climbing behind Alexander. His hands are bleeding from gripping rough stone. His legs shake with exhaustion. He leans close to Alexander's ear. "This is insane. We've lost 30 men already and we're not even halfway." Alexander doesn't slow down. "Would you rather die climbing or die attacking that pass tomorrow in broad daylight?" "I'd rather not die at all." "Then shut up and climb." 10:34 p.m. A Macedonian named Craterus is climbing in the middle of the line. He's 32 years old, a veteran of a dozen battles. He's killed men in single combat. He stood in the phalanx against cavalry charges. None of it prepared him for this. His left foot finds purchase on a tiny ledge. He shifts his weight. The stone crumbles. For one heartbeat, he's hanging by his fingertips over a 200-foot drop. His right hand screams with the strain. His left hand scrambles for new grip. He finds it, pulls himself back against the cliff face, stands trembling for 30 seconds while his heart tries to break through his ribs. The man behind him whispers, "You good?" Craterus nods, can't speak, keeps climbing. This is happening to every man on that cliff. Moments where death is one slipped grip away. Moments where courage is just the refusal to let go. Where survival is measured in fingertip strength and willpower. 11:52 p.m. Alexander reaches a section where the trail disappears entirely. For 15 feet, there's nothing but smooth cliff face. The goat trail resumes on the other side of a gap that seems impossible to cross. He studies it in darkness, more felt than seen. Runs his hands over the stones searching for holes. Finds a crack barely wide enough for fingertips. A tiny protrusion that might hold body weight for 3 seconds. This is the moment. If he can't cross, the entire mission fails. 3,000 men have climbed for 5 hours. 300 have died. All of it worthless if this gap can't be crossed. Alexander doesn't hesitate. He commits. Fingers in the crack. Weight on the protrusion. A controlled fall more than a climb. His hand reaches the far side, grabs, holds. He pulls himself across, turns back, can barely see the shapes of men waiting in darkness. One at a time, feel where I grabbed, don't think, just move. One by one, 2,700 men cross that gap. Some smoothly, some desperately, everyone terrified. But they cross. Because Alexander did it first, and if their king can do it, they can do it. That's leadership stripped to its essence. Not speeches, not inspiration, just going first into the darkness and trusting men will follow. Midnight, 4 hours into the climb. They've gained 1,000 feet of elevation, still 500 to go. The trail is doing things that shouldn't be possible. Hairpin turns on cliff faces, sections where they have to chimney between 2 rock walls. Places where one person has to cross first and throw rope back for the others. Men are crying as they climb, not from fear, from exhaustion, from the psychological weight of knowing that one mistake, one moment of inattention means death. But they keep climbing. Because Alexander is ahead of them, climbing the same impossible route, taking the same risks. If their king can do it, they can do it. 1:34 a.m. They reach the top. The trail emerges onto a plateau behind the Persian fortifications. Alexander pulls himself over the final ledge and lies flat on solid ground. His arms are trembling. His hands are raw meat. Behind him, the survivors pull themselves up one by one. He counts. They started with 3,000. They have 2,700. 300 men dead from falls in the darkness. But those 2,700 are now behind the Persian position, behind the garrison that thinks itself unassailable, behind an enemy that's drunk, confident, and completely unprepared for what's about to happen. Alexander gives his men 30 minutes to rest, to drink water, to catch their breath. Some are shaking so hard they can barely hold their swords. A young soldier named Philippos sits beside him. "They laughed at you this morning, the Persians. They mocked your tactics. Called you a boy playing at war." Alexander's smile in the darkness is terrifying. "In 2 hours, they'll stop laughing. Forever." 2:14 a.m. The attack begins in complete silence. No war cries, no trumpet signals. Just 2,700 Macedonians moving through darkness like ghosts. They reach the Persian camp from behind. Tents scattered across the plateau. Sentries posted but looking down at the valley, not behind them. Why would they? The cliffs are impossible to climb. Alexander's hand signal. The attack begins. What happens next is a nightmare that Persian survivors will describe but never fully explain. Macedonians emerging from darkness like demons. Cutting tent ropes so defenders are trapped in collapsing fabric. Killing men in their sleep. Setting fires that spread panic and confusion. The Persians don't even understand what's happening at first. They think it's an internal attack, betrayal. Some unit has turned traitor, because there's no way the Macedonians could be behind them. That's mathematically impossible. By the time they realize the truth, it's too late. 2:47 a.m. Ariobarzanes wakes to screaming. Runs from his tent to find his camp in chaos. Fires everywhere. His men running in every direction. And Macedonians somehow, impossibly, attacking from behind. He tries to rally his officers, tries to form defensive positions, but his garrison was positioned to defend against attack from below, not behind. All their fortifications face the wrong direction. Alexander's 2,700 are killing with mechanical efficiency. No mercy, no prisoners. This isn't warfare, this is extermination. Payback for 3,000 Macedonians killed in the morning assault. Payback for the 300 who fell climbing to get here. 2:51 a.m. A Persian soldier named Darius, coincidentally sharing the king's name, wakes to his tent collapsing on him. Fights free of the fabric to find the camp ablaze, men running everywhere, screaming in a dozen languages. He grabs his sword, tries to understand what's happening, sees a Macedonian cutting down fleeing Persians with methodical efficiency. The Macedonian's face is blank, like he's performing a chore, not killing men, just working. Darius charges, screams his war cry, raises his sword. The Macedonian turns, blocks the strike almost casually. His counterstrike opens Darius's throat before the Persian can process what happened. Darius falls, blood pumping between his fingers, watching the Macedonian move to the next target without pausing. That's what 6 hours of climbing and 300 dead brothers does to men. It empties them of everything except purpose. They didn't climb in darkness to fight fair. They climbed to kill. And killing is what they do. A Persian officer named Ariobarzanes finds himself face to face with a Macedonian covered in blood. The Macedonian's eyes are dead, empty, like he's already processed everything that's about to happen and accepted it. Ariobarzanes raises his sword. The Macedonian's blade goes through his throat before he can swing. Ariobarzanes falls, choking on blood, watching his killer move to the next target without emotion, like harvesting wheat. 3:29 a.m. The real genius of Alexander's plan becomes clear. While his 2,700 attack from behind, the main Macedonian force in the valley, 19,000 men, begins advancing up the pass. The Persian defenders, already panicking from the rear attack, now face frontal assault simultaneously. They're caught between two forces. Their defensive positions are useless. Their numerical advantage means nothing in the darkness and chaos. 3:47 a.m. Ariobarzanes has gathered maybe 500 loyal troops. They're trying to form a defensive line, but it's hopeless. The Macedonians are everywhere. His fortifications face the wrong direction. His numerical advantage means nothing in the chaos. He sees Alexander, recognizes him by the white plume even in the firelight. The boy king who everyone said was reckless, who everyone mocked for trying tactics that couldn't work. That boy is covered in blood and moving through Persians like they're made of paper. Ariobarzanes watches him kill 3 men in the time it takes to breathe, watches his officers die trying to stop this demon in human form, and he understands. This isn't warfare. This is inevitability. Alexander doesn't fight battles. He creates mathematical certainties and then executes them. The climb should have been impossible. The attack should have failed. But Alexander made impossible into real. Ariobarzanes realizes he's lost. Not just the battle, everything. His position, his honor, his life. The pass that never fell in 200 years is falling in 200 minutes. He makes the choice every Persian commander has made when facing Alexander. He runs, takes his personal guard, maybe 200 men, and flees into the mountains. Alexander lets him go, not from mercy, from calculation. A commander who runs spreads fear faster than any victory report. Ariobarzanes will tell every Persian garrison what happened here, how the impossible happened, how Alexander climbed unclimbable cliffs and attacked from the direction that couldn't be attacked. 4:47 a.m. As dawn breaks, the scale of the massacre becomes clear. 10,000 Persian dead. The entire garrison effectively destroyed. Some surrendered. Most died. A few escaped into the mountains where they'll freeze or starve. Macedonian casualties from the night attack. 87 dead. Plus the 300 who fell during the climb. Total cost, 387 men to destroy a garrison of 40,000. The young soldier Philippos stands among the corpses. He's covered in blood. His sword is notched from hitting bone. His hands won't stop shaking. The veteran Hephaestion finds him. First night battle? Philippos nods. Can't speak yet. It's different than day fighting. No honor in it. Just survival. You did good. I killed 4 men. They were sleeping. I cut their throats before they woke up. That's war, the version the poets don't sing about. Philippos looks at the carnage. They mocked him this morning, called his tactics foolish, said he was beaten. And tonight he killed 10,000 of them. That's the lesson. Mock Alexander all you want, but he'll prove you wrong in ways you can't imagine. 5:23 a.m. Hephaestion finds Alexander sitting on a stone. The king's sword is notched. His armor is dented. His hands are still bleeding from the climb. He looks exhausted beyond human limits. "We did it," Hephaestion says. Alexander looks at the bodies. "We murdered 10,000 men in their sleep. They would have killed us in the morning." "I know. Doesn't make it feel less like butchery." This is the Alexander that history forgets. The one who pays the psychological price for tactical genius, who understands that every victory costs pieces of your soul, who carries the weight of 300 men who fell in darkness so 2,700 could live. Hephaestion sits beside him. "The poets will sing of this, the impossible climb, the night attack. They'll make it glorious. The poets weren't here. They didn't hear Clitus fall, didn't watch men kill sleeping enemies. Glory is what we tell ourselves so we can sleep after doing necessary evil." 6:33 a.m. Alexander stands at the Persian fortifications looking down at the pass, the position that was mathematically unassailable, the garrison that never lost in 200 years. All of it useless because he refused to attack where he was expected. Parmenion arrives. He looks at the bodies, at the burned camp, at the Macedonian flag now flying over the Persian walls. "You climbed a cliff in complete darkness with 3,000 men, lost 300 of them to falls, attacked from an impossible direction, and destroyed a force 3 times your size." He pauses. "That's either genius or insanity. I can't decide which." Alexander's smile is tired. With enough conviction, genius and insanity look the same. The only difference is whether it works. And if it hadn't worked? If the climb failed? If you'd lost half your force in the darkness? Then I'd be dead, and you'd be explaining to Macedonia why you let me do something so stupid. But it did work, and now the road to Persepolis is open. The aftermath changes everything. Word spreads through the Persian Empire. The Persian Gates fell. The impossible position was taken. Alexander climbed cliffs in darkness and killed 10,000 warriors in one night. Persian garrisons start surrendering without fighting. Because if Alexander can do the impossible at the Persian Gates, what can't he do? Why die defending positions that mathematical impossibility can't protect? Within 2 weeks, Persepolis surrenders. The ceremonial capital of the Persian Empire, the city that symbolized 200 years of dominance, opens its gates rather than face whatever insane tactic Alexander will use next. The veterans of the night climb, become legend. Men point them out in camp. That's Hephaestion. He climbed the cliff at Persian Gates. It's said with the reverence usually reserved for heroes of mythology. But the veterans themselves don't talk about it much, because what they remember isn't glory. It's the sound of Clitus falling in the darkness, the wet impact at the bottom, the knowledge that 300 men died to make the victory possible. Craterus's hands shake whenever he looks at cliff faces. Hephaestion has nightmares about killing sleeping men. Philippos sees Clitus falling every time he closes his eyes. That's the cost nobody sings about. The price paid in blood and trauma for tactical genius. The strategic impact reverberates through military history. Alexander proved that fixed fortifications mean nothing if the enemy refuses to attack where expected. That mobility and audacity can overcome any defensive advantage. That sometimes the best tactic is the one your enemy thinks is impossible. 2,000 years later, Special Operations Forces study the Persian Gates, the night climb, the rear attack, the psychological impact of doing the impossible. The core principles are still valid. Surprise, speed, violence of action. Attack from unexpected directions. Make the enemy's strengths irrelevant. Modern mountain warfare owes debt to what Alexander did that night. He wrote the manual on vertical envelopment before helicopters existed. But the real lesson isn't tactical, it's psychological. Alexander understood that the human mind has limits on what it considers possible. Push beyond those limits and you don't just win battles, you break enemy morale at conceptual levels. Ariobarzanes thought the cliffs made his position unassailable. His entire defensive strategy was built on that assumption. When Alexander appeared behind him, it wasn't just a tactical defeat, it was a psychological collapse. If the impossible can happen, what else can happen? How do you defend against an enemy who ignores physics? The young soldier Philippos would fight in India 2 years later, would march to the edge of the known world. And whenever anyone asked what was Alexander's greatest victory, he'd say the same thing. Persian Gates, not because of the numbers, because he made us believe we could climb an unclimbable cliff in pitch darkness, made us trust him so completely that we'd rather fall to our deaths than question the plan. That's not tactical genius. That's something else entirely. 3,000 men climbed a cliff because one man convinced them it was possible. 300 died trying. 2,700 succeeded. 10,000 Persians died because they couldn't imagine someone would try something so insane. That's the power of conviction. That's why they stopped mocking Alexander's tactics, because he proved that with enough audacity, enough courage, and enough refusal to accept conventional limitations, you can turn mathematical impossibility into historical fact. The Persian gates fell in one night, but the real victory was psychological. Every Persian garrison from there to India knew that Alexander could appear anywhere, do anything, achieve the impossible. How do you defend against that? How do you maintain morale knowing your enemy might literally climb cliffs in darkness to kill you in your sleep? You don't. You surrender. Or you run. Or you die. The night the darkness started screaming, 10,000 Persians learned that mockery has a price. And sometimes that price is paid in blood at 3 in the morning when the impossible becomes real.